I don't know.
Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be taking a look at the Fresno State Bulldogs, who finished 9-4 in 2023 and capped off their season with a win over New Mexico State in the New Mexico Bowl. They wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring showcase on April 27th. We have a special guest joining us today. He works for the Fresno Bee. He is the man on the ground for the Fresno State Bulldogs. He is Robert Kuwada. Robert can be found at @rkuwada on X. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Well, Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you into sports journalism, and how long you've been covering the Bulldogs?
Oh, well, I've been doing this for quite some time. I think at one point I was news, sports, kind of making that decision, and found that I had a much more interest in background in sports. So that's the direction I went. And like I said, I've been around for a while. I covered Major League Baseball for 10 years, covered UCLA for a long time, and been up here in Fresno since about midway through the 2011 football season.
So recently, Jeff Tedford stepped down as head coach due to some health concerns. Tim Skipper was named the interim head coach. He formerly served as the assistant head coach and linebackers coach. What does this mean for Fresno State, heading into the 2024 season?
You hate to see Jeff Tedford had to step away for take care of some health issues, but I don't think it's going to have a major impact. The team went through this last bowl season, and you look back at what that team did in the bowl, coming off a pretty rough end of the regular season. Skipper and that staff did a great job putting everything back together and getting the team ready to play one last bowl game. And they went out there and won easily. They had I think it was probably one of the best coaching jobs of the bowl season. So, yeah, I think obviously they're going to miss having Tedford around, but I think they'll just keep motoring along.
For those not familiar with Fresno State's offensive style, how would you describe it? And do you think the loss of Tedford will have any impact?
That's a great question. I actually been thinking about this a lot. The offense is kind of a hybrid. You get some spread in there, you get some pro elements in there. But the one thing that really sticks out about Tedford's time here at Fresno State, they've had 4 offensive coordinators. Over the past 6 years, they've had like 5 quarterbacks start at least 4 games, and they're the only Mountain West team that's averaged 30 points a game for 6 years in a row. So doesn't matter who's been calling the plays, who's been throwing the ball, found ways to get it done. And they give them a big benefit of the doubt on a lot of things there that, they can make fixes, find the right things to do. It's one of those things, 6 years in a row, not a lot of people will get that done.
Well, let's get to the position where it all starts on the offense, and that's the quarterback. 2023 starter Mikey Keene Mikey Keene is back for the Bulldogs here in 2024. How has Keene looked in the spring and so far here in the start of fall ball?
Very good, actually. I think toward the end of last season, he got banged up a little bit and wasn't quite as effective as he was early in the year. The last 3 games of the regular season were pretty rough for the whole offense, really. I mean, they didn't even put up 20 in any of those games, which they hadn't done in quite some time. But, he's healthy now. I mean, the kid's got a big work ethic, which is a thing that Tedford used to always talk about. So, I mean, healthy. I expect him to have a very big season. Second year in the offense, he's going to be more comfortable with things, more vocal. And just with that experience, you'd expect him to be more efficient, better on third downs, better in the red zone. And, I think he's primed for a pretty big year.
So Logan Fife transferred to Montana, and the staff, if I remember it correctly, didn't bring in any transfers for that room. Is it safe to say that they feel pretty comfortable with the number 2 who's already in that room?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think, they did take a little bit of a risk because Joshua Wood, even in the spring, just a couple of months ago, was still coming back from a shoulder injury. But he is, again, he's back to full health, looks like. I mean, he made a throw the other day, kind of rolling hard to the right, throwing off one leg, got it out there about 50 yards to a running back for a touchdown. I mean, it's not a throw he could have made in the spring. Just physically, he wasn't back yet. But yeah, he is, and that's really helped that room because the third quarterback or the second quarterback, these 2 guys are competing. Jaden Mandel, they, I think Mandel kind of needed that competition level in the spring, and it wasn't really there, and it is now. So I think the number 2 spot, whichever one of those 2 guys it will be, I think they're very comfortable with.
Moving over to the running game, we were talking before we started recording about the great history they have there at running back, from Lorenzo Neal, Ronnie Rivers Sr., Ronnie Rivers Jr., Ryan Matthews, and in 2024 is no different. They bring back their leading rusher from a year ago in Malik Sherrod. How has that running back room looked so far?
The room is incredibly deep. I mean, you got Malik Sherrod, he's going to be one of the better backs in the conference this year. And you have other guys who've played a little bit and other guys who are waiting to play. But, I mean, they have a lot of talent stacked up there. Elijah Gilliam, Jonathan Arsenault. It's a deep room. They got some younger guys, like I said. So, yeah, a lot of guys there.
So, last season we saw when Sherrod, at least when he was healthy, he garnered the majority of those touches. Do you kind of see that happening again, or with that depth, you think maybe they rotate guys more often?
I think it'll be similar only because they have that depth. I think, you look at Fresno State, the history, like you said, you mentioned some of those running backs, but when they've had that guy, they've let him go. I mean, Jordan Mims in 2022, he was over 70% of the running back carries, and Ronnie Rivers was near 70%, I think, 2019. And of course, this is one thing that stands out to me about my time at Fresno State. Robbie Rouse, who's the all-time leading rusher here, he was in the 90s in 2011, and he had 328 carries, and the next running back had 20. So when they have that guy, they feed that guy. You look at what they have this year. I mean, Malik certainly could carry that kind of load, but with the depth they have, I don't think they'll need him to. So I think it'll probably look a little bit like it did last year.
Well, let's move over to the passing game. Eric Brooks and Jalen Gill both graduated, leaving 2023 standout freshman Jalen Moss as a leading receiver returning. They also added a few guys from the portal in the spring or after the spring. what kind of stands out to me in those transfers that came was their build. They seem to be these slot guys, 5'9", 5'9", 5'10". How much should I read into the size of this guys that they're bringing in?
Not much actually. I don't think. I think it's Fresno State. It's not Alabama. You're gonna take the best guys. If they can play ball, they're gonna play ball. They could be 6'3" or 5'10". You look at some of the guys who've been here recently. Jalen Moreno Cropper, I think, was around 6 feet tall, and he played outside his senior year. Keyshawn Johnson, I think he was around 6'1". So yeah, I don't think the size. These guys will line up 2-3 different spots during the course of the year. So I don't think their size is gonna be much of a deal.
What are kind of your expectations, the fans' expectations here in 2024 for this receiving room?
This is one area in the spring you kind of wondered about because, like you said, Jalen Moss, he's going to be a special guy. He's going to be one of the better receivers in the conference. Josiah Freeman, you're talking about guys with length and speed. He has a chance to have a really big second year here. But the depth, the experience level beyond those two, and I guess Magdalena, he was probably the third or fourth leading receiver last year. There were some questions, and they needed some guys to come in, Sharp and James, and they needed to shore that up a little bit, get some guys who can play. They brought in the JC guy also, who's made a pretty good impression, Kareem McCune. And Nathan Acevedo, who's been here a couple of years now, he's had a great start to camp. So I think they're feeling much better about the depth and explosiveness of that group.
We mentioned some of those names there. They got Michigan week 1. Do you have a feeling of who Fresno State should roll out there week 1?
Yeah. You're looking at Moss, you're looking at Freedom, you're looking at Delana, Sharp, and will be in that group, I'm sure, as well. James as well. I think you start there, and like I said, there's some other guys who can work their way onto the field.
Moving over to the tight end room, if you were to describe how the tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone who's never caught a Fresno State game, how would you describe it?
I would say underutilized. That's a position I've always thought you'd get the ball more here. You look at Trey Watson last year; he had 38 receptions, and that was the most in probably 5 or 6 years. And you look at the way they've used the position the past couple of years. I think it was 2022; they had 3 tight ends catch a ball, but all year, I think 3 of them were on third down, right? And red zone production was very similar to that. So it's one spot they've had guys, and you like to see them get the ball a little bit more. So yeah, underutilized is what I would say.
So this room took a hit, as you mentioned. Trey Watson, he transfers out to Washington. Didn't really see any transfers coming in, but the tight ends that are there, how have they looked so far, and is anyone standing out?
Very good, and that's part of the reason I say they're underutilized, because they've always had guys there, and they do this year as well. Jake Bass has played some football here already. Cameron Beecham's a guy that people are going to want to keep an eye on. Jake Tarwater. They've got guys at the position who can be assets in the pass game, help blocking at the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I think it's a group I've always wanted to see more use of the tight ends here.
On paper, this offensive line looks to be in pretty good shape heading into the 2024 season, and for the most part, this line stayed pretty healthy in 2023. They also bring back 4 of their 5 stars from a year ago, and I didn't really see a lot of additions to this room via the portal. One of those guys that they lose is a center, but I assume they feel pretty comfortable with the guys that they have in that room, that they have somebody that can take over that center position.
Yeah, they've moved Mose Vaval from guard to center, and he will play there, I'm sure, all year. He's probably their best and most versatile interior lineman.
So then, if right guard's getting freed up, is there a position battle there at right guard, or do they already have somebody there that you kind of pinpointed?
Yeah, they're kind of, I mean, everything's going to be a competition there through another couple weeks at least. But, they have some guys who've played there. The ones the past week or so have been Campbell McCarg, who came here from Oregon State, and Osmar Velez, who played a lot of football there at guard last year. So those are the two guys who've been running with the ones most recently. And outside at the tackles, Braylon Nelson and Torian Penwright, while Jacob Spomer, he started most of the year last year, got hurt, banged up in the late in the year, and they expect him back pretty soon. So he'll also join that mix.
Well, Robert, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season here in 2024, who would that be?
Does Moss count? Because I would go with him.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great off season. I mean, he's did a lot of work in the weight room. I mean, he looks completely different. Stronger, more physical. Going to be more explosive player this year than he was last year. I know he cut a lot of passes last season, but I expect him to have a really big year. Like I said, Cameron Beecham, the tight end, if they go there, I think he can have a really big year as well.
Well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And for those not familiar with the Bulldogs defense, can you describe the style and scheme that they run there?
Yeah, the base is, a 4-3, but they're going to be very multiple. It's going to look different week to week. And that's one of the strengths of this team. I think, you got a defensive staff who's been around a lot of football, been at the NFL level, and they're not afraid to mix things up a little bit. They'll match up how they need to match up week to week.
Well, let's talk about the guys that'll be running that defense there and start along that defensive line. The Bulldogs will miss Johnny Hudson Jr., who graduated. He was second on the room in tackles, but they returned their top sack guys from a year ago, and Devo Bridges and Jacob Holmes. This duo combined for 8.5 sacks in 2023. And it looks like a pretty deep room heading into 2024. They added Corey Foreman and Dijon Lafitte from USC and Jaira Satele from San Jose State. How did this defensive line look so far in camp, and is anyone standing out?
A lot of guys are standing out on the defensive line. And like I said, they do have some depth there. They got a lot of guys there who can play. Depth is kind of a thing, though. I mean, I thought they had a lot of it last year, and they started to get dinged up late in the year. And the next thing you know, New Mexico's putting up 300 rushing yards on them, and got a little rough for them late in the year. But they do have a lot of guys. You expect them to be a lot better. And like I said, Devo Bridges, he's just a fantastic player to watch. Played inside here, played outside here. He's really, really versatile guy.
Well, Corey Foreman was a former 5-star, and he might have been the number 1 overall recruit in the nation that year. If not, he was pretty close to it. He just hadn't. He was, at USC, never really seemed to get things going there. But what kind of impact do you think he can make for the Bulldogs here in 2024?
Yeah, Foreman can have a tremendous impact here. I mean, they're looking for some help pass rushing, and you look at him and you think, oh, he's going to just light offenses up. He has the potential to be one of the best and most impactful defensive players in the Mountain West Conference this year, I think. So just a matter of figuring out what he can do and how to best use him. I mean, is he a 50 play a game guy? Is he, 20 and just very productive there? But yeah, I mean, there's no question he can have a huge impact on this defense.
So who do you think we see out there for that defensive line week 1 against Michigan?
Inside, you have Gabriel Lightfoot, obviously. Kavika Baumgartner's been getting a lot of run in there. Jacob Holmes, like I said, has been getting run in there. And they do have other guys who can play. I'm sure there'll be a lot of rotation in there throughout the year. Keep guys fresh. Outside, Bridges and either Foreman or maybe Jason Jacks will start out there. So I think the front four will start there in that mix.
Well, like the D line, this linebacking group looks deep heading into the season. They'll miss the presence of Lavelle Bailey, who graduated. This room is highlighted by the return of the team's second leading tackler from a year ago, and Malachi Langley. Who needs to step up in this room alongside Langley in order for this defense to be successful in 2024?
You're basically looking at three guys inside. It's Malachi, you got Phoenix Jackson, and you got Tuasivi Nomura, who is another USC transfer. Tim Thomas can also be a guy in there. Basically inside, you're looking at those four guys.
So when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, the defensive backfield took a hit in losing Maurice Norris Jr. and Carlton Johnson. However, this room brings back its leading tackler from a year ago, Dean Clark, safety. Other than R.J. Reagan, who came in via Arizona State, I didn't see many other transfers. Does this staff feel good about this defensive backfield heading here into fall camp?
I think they are comfortable where they are. I don't know if they feel good quite yet. There's still some question marks. One of the guys who got dinged up early last year was Cam Lockridge, who was, probably best or second best corner they had in 2022. He was had 2 interceptions in the conference championship game, and he's back this year. He kind of tweaked a knee on the first day of fall camp and has been pretty much day to day. He hasn't been back yet, but I mean, if they can get him back and healthy and on the field, he's going to make a huge difference at one corner spot. It really gives them some depth there. Again, it's another spot where they have, a good top level, and then you kind of have some youth behind it. So, I think the pieces will come together, but Lockridge is obviously somebody that they'd like to have on the field week 1 if he can get back.
Yeah. Justin Houston missed the 2023 season with the injury. Is he back healthy, and will he have a role on this team here in 2024?
Yeah, that spot is pretty much Justin Houston and Reagan. Like I said, they have another guy, Charlotte and Charles, who can play there as well. But yeah, Houston, he's back practicing healthy. So that's another big addition, because that's a spot that they weren't quite sure the depth would be there. So yeah, he's a big piece.
We mentioned about last season that Dean Clark kind of led this team in tackles. Is that something you expect to kind of happen again here in 2024?
I mean, he's very active player, very good player. He's perfect for what they do week to week. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was up there 1, 2, 3 in tackles again.
Well, Robert, Justice asked you on the offensive side about your breakout, so I'm going to ask you on the defensive side. Who's that player that you think is going to have the breakout type season in 2024?
Again, this is a guy who racked up some numbers last year, but Jacob Holmes, really intriguing guy, because there was a time there last year, probably through the 7th or 8th week, where he was playing 10 to 12 snaps a game and had all those sacks and had all those TFLs. So it'll be interesting to see if he turns into a productive, 40, 50 play a game guy, or if he's better used in those short spurts like he was early in last year. But he's really an intriguing piece who can have a big impact on that defense.
Well, with fall camp starting, which position group or groups do you feel is the most concerning?
The offensive line, I think, is where the most probably the most concerning position group. They do have a lot of veteran players. They have the most returning starts in the conference, but you just want to see more consistency. You want to see more physicality. 105 yards a game rushing last year. I think it's probably the lowest in forever for them. They didn't protect real well. The pieces obviously are there. They've played together for a long time. You want to see them take a step up, and they're going to have to maximize their potential on offense.
What would you say the main strength of the team heading into the 2024 season?
The strength, I think, is the coaching staff. Honestly, I think, you look at them on both sides of the ball, veteran staff, a lot of guys with Fresno State ties, which, for people not familiar with Fresno State in this conference, that's a huge deal. They deal with a lot here. I think that experience helps, but you look at guys like Jethro Franklin and J.D. Williams and John Baxter, and Kevin Coyle was here years ago, and the staff is just really strong. I think they get them an edge, I think, in the conference.
When it comes to recruitment of new players and retention of existing players, how has NIL and the transfer portal impacted Fresno State?
It hasn't really had a huge impact on them. They've lost some guys, obviously. And honestly, Fresno State's a little bit behind in the NIL game. Marcus McMurray is kind of running their collective now. He was the quarterback here a few years ago, won the conference championship in 2018 for them. And he's starting to put some pieces together. But they really need to improve that part of the game, outside the game. But yeah, like I said, they haven't lost a lot of guys because of NIL. Trey Watson obviously left for Washington when, Kalen DeBoer was still there and Ryan Grubb was still there. Everything was familiar. And, he's at Texas A&M now. So, that wasn't strictly an NIL thing, and outside of that, they're not getting killed by guys leaving because of NIL.
Well, and talking about NIL, what can you tell us about the collective that they have there at Fresno State? Do you know roughly when they got started, and kind of what does that look like there at Fresno?
I imagine it's like a lot of them in the group of five right now. Started up a couple of years ago, very slowly putting the pieces together. They're not out there with at a level of Boise State yet, but they're getting there. I know Marcus signed up a pretty lucrative deal fairly recently, and he'll continue to work at it and get Fresno State up to a more competitive level. I think that's one of the things they really need to focus on is the student athlete part of the equation. And I think that's where the new athletic director will focus some of his attention, and they'll get that up to speed.
What does success look like for the Bulldogs here in 2024?
I think any year Fresno State should be expected to compete for the Mountain West Championship. They should be a contender to get into that game. Anything less than that, I think would be a disappointment to people here in Fresno, especially after the past 5-6 years. So, if you're talking about success, that's it. It's pretty high bar.
Well, Robert, is there anything else that you want to share or think that we need to know about this 2024 Fresno State Bulldog football team?
I think it'll be fun to watch, and I think it'll be interesting to see. The attendance at the stadium, I think, will be big for them. They're on a pretty good roll right now. They led the group of 5 in attendance last season, close to 40,000 a game. And when you think about some of the atmospheric conditions around Fresno, especially early in the year, that's not an easy ask of the fans here. I mean, I walked off the practice field today and got in my car. It was 111 degrees. So, there are some challenges to getting people into the stadium here, but they pull it off. It's a pretty good fan base.
Well, Robert, thank you for taking time out of your day to share with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Sure, anytime.
All right, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until next time, we are G5 Hive.